So, watching Lindor and Ohtani play this week, I saw Ohtani come down to second base, and there's Lindor, and he comes up, and he gives him a big hug,
Yeah,
like they're old buddies or something like that. And all I could think about, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is if this were 40 or 50 years ago, they'd never do something like that. That's the opposition. That's the enemy. He's trying to take my meal money.
Right. I mean, I don't think even 34 years ago they were concerned about the opposition taking their meal money. That was
maybe 60 or 70 years ago.
Like 70 or 80 years
right,
ago. But I do think that Macho Baseball, the whole there's no crying in baseball kind of way of looking at the game, I think it's gone pretty much from almost all levels of baseball, from the fans to the players to the managers to the organizations themselves. There doesn't seem to be the same need for that sort of macho baseball.
Well, and by macho baseball saying, like, it doesn't mean that there aren't as many fights as there used to be on the field. And when you see a bunch of guys come out of the dugout, I think you were saying this, that's basically why the fights don't happen, because everybody can sit in a dugout and they all mill about, but nobody really is throwing punches or getting hurt or anything like that. So whereas before there would be fisticuffs. People were getting split lips and stuff like that.
Didn't Marichal go after a guy with a bat one time?
We talked about that, Johnny Roseborough, yes. But I'm remembering this book I read when I was a kid, and it was Steve Gelman was the author, and it was called The Bonus...
the $60,000 bonus, baby, because you gave it to me as a kid.
Yeah. Actually, I want to get the right name of this, because I think it's a bonus, because somebody else wants to read it. The Bonus Kid. Baseball Bonus Kid, 1961, by Steve Gelman. I was reading this probably 10 years later, or 8 years later.
This is a true story, too.
No,
it's a made up.
No, it's total fabrication.
When I read it, I thought it was a real story.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny because the Bobby Reynolds is the star, so he's the farm boy kid who can hit the ball a country mile, and you're hitting all these. Actually, in high school, he hit a 470-foot home run, and so he gets to go to the contract. He gets a $60,000, which this is 1961. That was a giant contract.
That's a huge amount of money,
right? So he's got and he goes straight to the camp, in Florida with the major league players. So he's 18 years old, and the players hate his guts, right? Because they've been working so hard for so long to get their paltry $31,000 salary, and this kid hasn't even played a major league game to $60,000. So they shine him and they give him a hard time, and they're not nice to him, and he's crying because he can't hit in the major leagues, and Dad, I should come home. All the stuff, Willie Mays stuff. I can't hit here anymore and stuff like that. So finally, he's at an away game, and the opposing team, I guess, corners him after a game. A bunch of the players at a bar or something like that, and so he's thinking he's going to get the crap kicked out of him. And all of a sudden, all his guys from the team are behind him, backing him up, and that's when he really became a member of the team. That was what I looked at as macho baseball. Right, that your team had your back, and that you're going to fight. You're willing to fight in the field because these guys were fighting, as we said before, for meal money. And this kid got it handed to him, and how horrible that was to them that he could do that when they worked there. One guy, this catcher, he bought the car with the hard sweat and toil. I mean, all the stuff. Do you remember that from really?
I mean, it was just it's so over the top.
Oh, totally over the top. But the point was that's how they drew baseball. It was sort of this, classically, looked at way of seeing baseball through these rose-colored glasses of, only the men play.
Right, and they were doing it purely for the love of the game, even though they were very angry at a young boy for getting way more money than them. But they really only played because they loved it. Like, I always think it's so weird that we, in the... I'm blanking on the name of the movie. I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of A League of Their Own. In A League of Their Own, there's no crying in baseball, right. Even though
that's the same attitude.
There's plenty of crying in baseball nowadays, and even then
Wilmer Flores.
The thing that doesn't make sense is even then there was acceptable crying in baseball because nobody was saying bupkis about Lou Gehrig breaking down during his unbelievable speech.
Right, but he was no longer playing at that point.
Right, but that's still crying.
But he was in uniform.
He's in uniform. That's still crying in baseball. Wilmer Flores crying on the field in 2015 because he thinks he's about to be traded away from his home team.
That is one of the great moments in Met history, by the way.
That is a great moment in Met history because he's crying on the field in one inning.
He wants to be a Met so much.
And then he goes,
a fan, how could you not love that?
And then he goes and hits the game-winning home run later in the same game or a couple days later. It's perfect.
But they made a big deal about Wilmer's crying and the idea that, is that manly to cry on the field to do that. And you know what? It was fine, and he didn't suffer any ill effects from anybody giving him a hard time after that.
Now, part of it is that, in mainly Macho Baseball extended to a whole lot of things like running over the catcher, things like taking out the guy at second base and, spiking him with your cleats. And honestly, I wonder how much of that came down from organizational pressure being like, hi, guys, please do not piss off the other team so that they take out our star shortstop, who I've spent lots and lots of money signing.
Right. Well, and so, okay, so that takes me to a point I was going to make later in the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but yes, because what it is now is back in the 40s and before that and even somewhat a little bit after that, everybody was fighting for money. You had a few players that got paid big, but most of the players weren't really paid all that well. And we talked about having jobs and the other. Now you've got a millionaires club that's a fraternity.
Right.
All right. So everybody that comes to the Major League Baseball, see the rookie gets a base hit, goes to first base, and welcome to the show. Isn't it nice being here? We get paid a lot of money for a game we love to play.
Like the guy, the first baseman will shake his hand.
Not, hey kid, no, you're raw rookie. I'm gonna try to step on your foot so you fall down going to second base. Ha ha. So you don't get my money. There's none of that. We're all getting paid, and everybody is for. It's only 750 guys playing Major League Baseball.
Right.
If you do 25 times 30.
Right. But I think I think it's also a top-down directive, too, that the managers and the teams aren't interested in engaging in these sort of, one-upsmanship scenarios where, well, if you do this to me, I'm going to do this to you, because the worst thing that can happen is somebody important to the team gets hurt because of Macho Baseball.
Like the way Chase Utley took out Ruben Tejada in the playoff game, right?
And then that led to an actual rule change.
Right. I think that's important. Did you see, I posted this week, and you can go, so Albert Bell in a game against Fernando Viñas playing second base, and Bell is trying to, well, not trying to, he's on first base, he's going to second base, a ground ball, and he literally cross body blocks Viñas.
He just cross-checks it.
Into the outfield, and Viña gets up and he looks at Bell, and because he was out, Bell was out, and Bell runs off the field, and Viña doesn't know what to do. I was impressed that Viña got up, by the way, because Albert Bell's a big man.
And he just throws Viña like a rag doll.
And that was acceptable play to take a guy out like that at that time, and he didn't get. He did get thrown out of that game,
as he should have been.
As he should have been thrown out of that. Watch that thing. It's hard to believe. I think it only happened in the 90s.
Right. But I think the problem with that is, and this is the thing, this has been a hot topic in Mets land lately, in that the Mets have been hit a lot this season. They do not lead the league in major leagues in getting hit by pitches. I believe that still belongs.
Somebody else does?
The Seattle Mariners.
Yeah.
They have Ty France and another guy that get hit all the time. I think Ty France has been hit like 20-something times this year or something. It's insane. But part of the issue is that they get hit a lot, and the Mets pitchers have not hit a lot of guys this season. Interestingly, same with the Mariners. So they're not getting retaliated against for hitting tons of guys. But the Mets color commentator and former pitcher, Ron Darling, has been commentating on the Mets, saying that they need to start, even if, Pete got hit yesterday on Saturday.
In the back of the neck.
With a slider. Now, part of it was Pete dodged away because it would have hit him just in the arm.
It was an 88-mile-an-hour slide. That's pretty fast.
But two things. Pete wouldn't have been hit in the head had he not dodged out of the way. But I'm sorry, when an 88-mile-an-hour object is coming out of me, I'm not thinking about the best way to dodge. I'm just trying to get out of the way.
And Pete took a couple of steps toward the mound, and they were saying I think the catcher, he didn't mean to throw at you. And so Ron's point,
and I think this is a fair point, is at a certain point, it doesn't matter.
You're responsible for what happens.
I believe there was a Reds pitcher earlier this year that hit two guys, either a Reds or an Athletics pitcher, hit two guys in the head in the same inning with pitches. And the umpire, even though they were both accidents, ejected him at that point.
I don't know this, actually. Right. I'll have to look this up.
This was either this season or last season. And the umpire ejected him because he was just so wild that he was no longer being safe. And I think that is part of the issue with throwing at guys, is that we are annoyed as Met fans that Pete Alonso has been hit by pitches repeatedly, and that may injure him.
And his teammates as well.
And his teammates. And so that may injure him. So what is our solution? We need to do that to the other team.
That's Macho Baseball.
And that's the problem.
And Buck Showalter, manager, has clearly sort of avoided directing his team to retaliate in that fashion.
And as much as I agree with Ron, because Ron Darling raises a good point, well, look, the only thing that's going to get those pitchers to stop doing that is probably his own teammates coming to him and saying, hey, stop hitting them. I'm getting drilled now.
Right, right, and if you're gonna throw inside, and you a couple of pitches go wild and all that kind of stuff, you're responsible for what happened. Even if you didn't mean to hit the guy, it's not about intent after a while.
Right.
It's about what's happening, and you have to make them aware that you're not going to stand for this, and glaring at them is probably not enough to get them to change their ways.
Why would that get them to stop at all?
So I was surprised today at the game that there was not one pitch thrown inside at any of the Angels, and I was looking at Ohtani and Peterson and a lefty against a lefty going, ooh, that would be something if he dusted Ohtani. Everybody would boo, but it would send them. No, there was no message sent.
No, and clearly that is the way the Mets are choosing to handle this, that they're not interested in retaliating for getting hit by pitches. And I think that's...
And what does retaliation look like? Let's
hitting other guys with pitches.
Yep, hit him just pitching inside, or does it have to hit somebody?
You got to hit
and
somebody.
If you're going to hit him, where are you supposed to hit him? In the rear end, in the leg, in a place where the guy can't get hurt.
Right.
If you're good enough to control your pitch, which you couldn't in the first place, because that's why you started hitting guys.
Right. Well, no, they're hitting you. That's why you're throwing
Yeah.
at people. But I think the problem is anybody that's saying, oh, well, you just hit them in the leg, hit them in the butt, are like the same people that are like, well, why don't cops just shoot people in the legs to disarm them? It's not that easy. You think it's easy to just hit these guys because the other thing is if you throw at their legs, it's much easier to dodge. So it's not easy for these guys to just hit somebody. So if you're going to be hitting, the thing is you can't instruct a pitcher to hit somebody in a perceived okay location because it's simply too difficult to do.
Well, and to your point, so obviously I hadn't intended on talking about this, but the whole Piazza and Clemens thing in the World Series, right? When Piazza
and that's Macho Baseball,
and the bat breaks and it goes out to the mountain, and Clemens throws the bat at Piazza, and then they look, you read his lips and they're saying, why did he do that for? And he goes, I thought it was a ball.
Well, right, as if somehow that was going to exonerate. So it's like, oh, so you were trying to.
That just tells you a little bit about Roger Clemens,
right?
But the point is that kind of attitude, and if you go back even before that, I was reading something about Jackie Robinson and in the Dodgers in the 40s, and I guess Sal Maglie, who was known as the barber because he pitched inside, was known for hitting people, and the Dodgers were getting hit left and right, by Maglie of the Giants. So finally, Jackie says, "Here's what I'm going to do. Okay, I'm going to lay a bunt up the first baseline that the first baseman has to field. The pitcher's going to run to first base. When the pitcher runs over, I'm going to take him out. Okay, that's what we're going to do." So Magley's on the mound, and Jackie bunts it up the first baseline, but the Magley doesn't cover. The second baseman, Davey Williams, goes over to cover, and Jackie obliterates him, and then he goes, "Oh well, sorry."
and I think that's just like kind of it, is that we just don't need that. It's the same way with like trucking the catcher to try and dislodge the ball. Is baseball really better because I didn't get to watch Sean Murphy play for 3 months because some random guy destroyed him trying to score a run?
Of course you're right. But I was probably not even 11 years old when Pete Rose came down the line in the All-Star game, which, now you think about this. It's an All-Star game, and they weren't playing for anything. And he took out Ray Fosse at home plate with a knocked the ball loose. And Ray Fosse was injured and never was the same player again for the rest of his career.
Right, exactly. And it's not a good look for
baseball. But I'll never forget that moment because it was shocking.
Right, but the problem is that there's too many people that confuse not forgetting that moment with that being like some kind of positive for baseball. Like, because at where do you draw the line when you're running over the catcher? Like, at what point when a guy takes like a flying knee at the guy and just destroys him one time, and it's just like, well, he was trying to break up the play. Like, we were okay with guys sliding into second base to take people out until a guy broke his leg and was never the same player again.
It wasn't a Buster Posey that changed the rule, right?
Yeah.
What happened to Buster Posey?
So that's the thing with all of these Macho Baseball rules. These rule changes have come because they've been paid essentially in blood. We have watched talented players lose time from their playing career because we want to feel tough.
Well, yes. Yeah. Well, no, I assume that's it because let's face it. From a pitcher standpoint, pitching inside is part of the game, and there is nobody who's going to say that, you can't give up the inside of the play. No, we should only throw it away from him so we don't hit him. No, that's not how you play baseball.
Right.
So with that thought in mind, you run the risk when you're going to throw inside like that where sometimes guys get hit. But when it gets out of hand and the same team gets hit over and over again, or it's happening at a greater rate because guys are throwing with greater speed, and maybe, I'll say it, right, maybe the lack of sticky stuff stuff sometimes lets stuff get away from pitchers
I
that
think you've
wouldn't
got
gotten away before.
Pitchers that are throwing with more velocity than ever, trying to generate more spin rate than ever. That's going to result in bigger misfires than ever.
Yeah, and if you're standing in the wrong place, that misfire is
in
your ear, as they said in Field of Dreams, right? So watch out for in your ear. And I think so from a Macho standpoint, the pitchers have a hard time because you don't want to get thrown out of the game necessarily. So you had to be ready, and I think pitchers were more willing to get thrown out of the game 50 years ago or something like that. I don't care. I'm going to protect my guys and show them. And whereas now going, man, we don't want Garrett Cole thrown out of the game. He's our best pitcher, man. I don't want to start that kind of stuff. And so I think that there's a difference in the way people look at it now and the pitchers themselves.
Right. Exactly. I mean, and then I think it's also interesting that then Major League Baseball sort of threw a wrench in the plan after the Ruben Tejada injury where Utley takes him out. The next game, Syndergaard comes out and throws behind the guy, clearly trying to be like, I don't want to hit the guy because I recognize that's bad, but I have to do something to show that you can't break our shortstop's legs. And of course, Syndergaard gets summarily tossed from the game. But I feel like that also puts the players in a sort of an unwinnable situation where there's no way to respond to the slights that are occurring against your team. Other than winning.
Get up and hit the ball. And that's what Pete Alonso said, going like the only way to really get even is to hit and win the game. And I remember what I wanted to say about the Piazza thing with Clemens. So I don't think it was the next season that Sean Estes was pitching for the Mets or to the point where Clemens was at bat and Sean Estes, everybody said, well, he's going to hit Clemens for whatever's going on. And he couldn't hit him.
Yeah.
He threw it behind him. He's trying to hit Clemens, and Clemens is a big guy who doesn't move very fast. And Sean Estes was trying to hit the guy, and he couldn't do it. So sometimes there's that also. I mean, it's not that easy to throw where you want it all the time.
I think the thing to anybody that's just like, oh, you just throw up and in and brush them back. There was a cricket player that died after getting hit in the head with a cricket ball.
Right, and I think that's the thing that because guys are throwing harder, the risk is probably greater than before, even with batting helmets.
So
remember, they didn't use always wear those.
And that's why it's so hard for me sometimes to just go along with the suggestion of, well, just drill them back.
Right, and that training of not doing that should have started now, obviously, and it has for a long time at the lower levels, right? High school, I hope there aren't any high school coaches out there going, your guys got hit, drill him in the ribs.
That happened when I was in school.
Yeah, you were told by a coach to hit somebody?
We had the signal, the middle finger. If you got the middle finger, that was okay, you got to hit the guy.
Doesn't that sound a little like Macho Baseball to you?
That's what it is.
Right. So there you are talking about how it shouldn't have happened, and you were part of it because you're a kid doing what the coach tells you.
Yeah, what am I going to do? Not.
And so if the kids get conditioned to that and then they get through the higher levels,
they're just going to keep doing it.
They're going to keep doing it. And particularly at lower levels where, let's face it, winning a minor league championship is not that amazing.
Right, exactly.
So throwing at guys at the minor league level is going to be a little bit different. And you're trying to prove yourself at those levels. So the idea of breaking up a double play, it's interesting how much they've tamped down on that because players couldn't manage it themselves.
Right, because if you're going to because you're putting guys that are trying to eke out every little thing to show that they deserve to move up to the next level, they're going to, if they can break up a double play in some way, it's the same way if there's a great book that you've given me that's about cheating in baseball. If you give players the opportunity to eke out 1% more advantage, they're gonna take it.
It's called Intentional Balk by Mark Armour and Dan Levitt. Yeah, good book. We hope to have those guys on the podcast.
And I think that's the same thing. If you're gonna give players a chance to make it so that a double play isn't a double play, they're gonna take it.
So nobody wants to fight, right? We talk about hockey fights, being okay because they're on skates and there's only so much, even though guys can get pretty beat up in a hockey fight, I think there's only so much leverage you can get on skates.
And I think there's also the thing with hockey is because hockey is so much more of a physical contact game.
You need to let the emotion out.
You kind of have to have a way to let the emotion, because you need to have fights to not let the devolve into something much worse.
But if something is said or something happens, on the field, like the Tim Anderson thing this year, when the fight that he just had with Jose Ramirez, misunderstanding, I guess, between the players to some degree, and Anderson's sort of a hothead in the first place, and he was ready to go. That could have been the result of a season of frustration for the White Sox just boiling over.
Right, not literally, we are very large men slamming into each other and making that much physical contact is going to cause emotions to boil over.
But you don't really see fisticuffs on the field anymore, and I think that's a good thing.
Well, that's why we were saying earlier. That's why the bench is empty, because the bench is empty. So like when we saw last night when Alonso got fired up and started trying to move towards the pitcher, there were guys on the Mets whose only responsibility was to corral Alonso and make sure he could not get involved in that.
That dude's big.
He's large, and you don't want your star players having to miss games because they got into a fight.
And you don't want Pedro Martinez picking up, 80-year-old Don Zimmer and throwing into the ground. Oh, man. You talk about bad stuff.
Right, so I don't think you're going to see as many baseball. The only way you're going to get baseball fights is that a guy basically has to lose. He has to go from 0 to 100 almost instantly. He has to get hit by something, and before anybody can react, he has to be out towards the mound. Because if he takes any,
or it has to be such a blatantly dirty play, right?
Right.
Like guy comes in with spikes flying, cuts the guy, it's dragging his foot across his uniform,
right. Like, or he
make him bloody.
He slides with a leg up,
right,
and really goes at him.
That could be that way,
right? And that's also different because in that situation, the guy that did the action is right in front of the guy that received it. Whereas with the pitcher and the batter, there's 60 feet separating them. That slows down a lot of potential fights.
Here's the thing that strikes me about that too. And if you do that and you're a team, I think you run the risk of being ostracized by your own team, right? Because if you do something and what the hell are you doing that for to that guy? Or these are guys that we play with. We're all trying to make a living
which
here.
is why I think you're only going to see either big name superstars or really big name players starting fights or complete nobodies. The reason for that is if a big name superstar starts a fight, everybody on his team is going to go along with it because it's him. Like if a Shohei Ohtani wanted to start a fight, the Angels are going to go with it because it's Shohei and you're just going to back up Shohei. And if he's that pissed off to start a fight. And then the only other people on the team crazy enough to start a fight are going to be the guys that barely are ever on the team, so they don't have anything to lose. If you're some guy that's like an end of the bench guy, and you're always at work, if you're DJ Stewart, who's always got the worry of getting...
You're saying his 10-game suspension doesn't mean that much?
No, what I'm saying is if you're DJ Stewart and you're always at the threat of being DFA'd or being dropped from the team, you're not going to go out and start a fight on your own accord.
This is your livelihood here.
Exactly. You're not going to have the same social capital for your teammates who are going to be like, why the hell did you drag us into that?
Well, and the amount of money is so much that a guy getting suspended at a lower level for 10 games is going to cost him a lot of coin, a lot more than it used to cost him.
Exactly. Are you really going to want to take a 10-game pay cut because you got really mad at somebody?
And it doesn't mean that the players... So here's the thing, the old-time baseball fan, well, they don't play the game the way they used to, they don't play for blood or what. No, they don't play for blood, actually. They play for money, and a lot of money. Go ahead.
But I think that's a big part of it, is that every player is being paid well nowadays. Even the players that are making league minimum are still doing so much better than the average American. You don't feel good when you look at the numbers. You're like, oh, wow, they make that much money. And so I think because of that, because guys are not going to bed literally hungry anymore,
or need a second job in the off season,
you don't have these guys that are
they're just not that angry,
right? And I think free agency also has a big part of it. Guys are so much more likely to play with one another for different periods throughout their career, and also with the increase in international players that are on there, you are way more likely to have a guy on your team that you have played with, or an opponent that you have played with at some point in your career. Unlike back in the day where you only played for one team and the guy that played for the other team, the chance of you ever playing with him was pretty much limited to a single all-star game.
Right. And and they may have run into each other along the way, which has happened, in the past. So what do you think though in terms of, these professional players, do you think they, go back and when they fraternize with the players on the field like you see happening now at virtually every base, at first base, do you think that takes away from the game in any way? Do you think that takes their edge off in any way? Do you think there's any argument to be made that there's too much friendliness amongst the players during a game?
No, I don't know. That just feels like, are you being friendly with being able to respect your competitor and have a conversation with the guy doesn't mean you're not competitive.
No, I definitely see that and I agree that. But to what degree do you feel like, you're counting on all the players at the moment they step over the line? It's everything about helping my team and winning, and you are the team I'm trying to beat. I will do everything in my power to beat you. Right? I hope so.
Right. How many guys do you think that can make the major leagues that don't have that attitude?
that's my point.
Right.
And that's why I wrote a whole article on, players don't coast on contracts like people think they do, like, Hayward and guys like that. These guys are trying.
If these guys were the type to coast, they would not be where they are today.
Cody Bellinger's having a great year. Do you think he wasn't trying the past 3 years?
Exactly.
So that's that, and so the ability to be friendly with the guys on the field is just a manifestation of, as I said before, that the fraternity that they're all a member of. Right? It's really cool to be in the Major League Baseball fraternity because you get paid and you
get paid to play baseball
in front of a bunch of people that love to watch you play. So there's not that latent anger, that insecurity. There's not the insecurity there on the part of the player that would cause them to react in a way that they did 50 and 60 and
you're not going to have
guys.
And also you have more cameras. You have way more people talking about you. So you can't pull a Ty Cobb and go into the stands to fight somebody like you used to. I mean, you can. You just
or under the stands as players
You're just not going to do that because
I'll meet you under the stands.
Everybody's going to see that, and you don't have the ability to bury that kind of story anymore.
And there can be feuds, right? There can be a couple of players
guys
that have a problem with each other, and we saw that with Hunter Strickland and Bryce Harper.
Right, Harper hits a home run off him in a playoff game. 3 years later,
Strickland drills him
for pimping the home run.
3 years ago. Come on, what's wrong with you?
Right, but the thing is, nobody looked at Hunter Strickland in that situation was like, good for you. You stood up for yourself there.
No, it looks stupid.
It just looks stupid.
Yeah.